I didn't have any aspirations to be CEO. The company I was working at, I was in the executive team reporting directly to the CEO, who resigned one Thursday. And by the end of the week, we'd put in place a bit of a plan as to how we were going to manage his notice period. And I went to bed Friday night not thinking any more about it. Woke up on Saturday morning to find a whole bunch of missed calls from the chairman and the head of HR. And when I got hold of them, it turned out that the board wanted to appoint me as interim CEO, and they were going to meet on Sunday night to make a decision if I was open to it, and then make an announcement to everybody on Monday morning. So I literally had a weekend to get used to the idea. So yeah, that came up really quickly. And while that was only an interim appointment, I did end up getting that role permanently, and I took it very seriously from the beginning. That was my introduction to life as a CEO. The company I was working at had an amazing cohort of women in leadership roles. And the way we approached work was to back each other. And so there was this incredibly supportive environment that we all came up through that gave us a lot of confidence to actually take on roles and expand and test ourselves without too much fear of failure. So I really credit those women with supporting me right throughout becoming CEO and then beyond. And that support continues to this day. We're still a really, really tight group. I've always been the primary caregiver for my two kids, which means I worked part-time for 14 and a half years. And so I feel like I did a lot of the career stuff without a whole lot of support from partner. And then I became a single mum when my youngest was in year 7, so we still had all the high school years ahead of us. And that's also coincided with me going back to work full-time. So the kids actually played a really important role in all of that. They got it when I went from 4 days a week to 5 days a week, sometimes 6 and 7 days a week. And they just kind of rolled with it, even during the weeks when they had 6 or 8 different babysitters in the space of a week. So I'm very grateful to them for that support that they sort of gave me, even though they were young. They could see that it was important, and they were really on board with the whole thing, which was amazing. When looking at building a pipeline, it's tempting to first look in the executive and then in the level reporting to them, the senior leadership team. We do ourselves a disservice if we don't look deeper into the organisation to really identify talent and potential. And whether that turns into a CEO pipeline or whether it just turns into a great pipeline of people coming through the organisation who then maybe pass out of it and go somewhere else, or continue on for years but don't quite make CEO, that's going to be a worthwhile exercise. And obviously, looking at people who don't come through the traditional roles of CFO or perhaps COO, that's where there's also going to be a lot of talent sitting, and then finding those people and trying to give them the breadth of experience that will help them become CEO. And maybe that involves putting them in charge of projects where they have to manage to a budget, have to deliver a P&L. All these kinds of things are really still important for becoming CEO. But testing their curiosity, their aptitude to learn, how well can they absorb the inner workings of the organisation, all of that is also really important in your CEO pipeline. So in the 6 years leading up to when I was first appointed as an interim CEO, I had 6 different roles in that time. And so that took me right around the organisation into all different corners of it. The first day I stood up to do an all-hands update with everybody at that company, I looked around the room and realised that the only team that hadn't reported to me at some point was the IT team. Every other team, some aspect of them, had been part of my scope at some point in the previous 6 years. So getting that breadth of understanding of what made the business tick and what all the different functions did and what the drivers were for success in the business was really, really key. I think the most important one, though, was The first of those 6 roles, the first time I stepped out from being just a lawyer and I was running the finance function for the Australian business, was supposed to do the role for 3 months on an acting basis, and 3 months turned into 20 months. And I learned so much about how the business's finances worked. I went through 2 budget cycles with the team in that time, and that really stood me in good stead for senior leadership roles, but particularly for CEO. So when applying for a role that might call on skills or knowledge that you don't have, I think it's really important to understand that there'll be people around you who will have those skills and knowledge, and what you bring will be really unique, but also valuable. So when I first started running a function that I knew nothing about, which happened to be a finance function, I had accountants and tax specialists and payroll people and project accountants reporting to me. And there wasn't a minute when I knew how to do the job that they were doing. I couldn't do the things that they were doing in the same way that I could do the jobs that lawyers I'd been managing were doing. I realised fairly early on in that role that what I had to focus on was where were they getting stuck? Where were they not getting their message across in the organisation? Where were their presentation skills needing work? Where did they have problems that I could help them unpick just by asking some open-ended and probing questions, not because I had the answers? And so I really focused my attention on being an unblocker, and that really helped me to navigate that role. It also helped the team build confidence in me. They were more than happy to share their expertise. They knew I didn't know everything there was to know about the finance function. They were more than happy to bring their knowledge and have that recognised and celebrated. And I brought my curiosity and my knowledge about the business and my influence in the wider business to really make something happen between us that wouldn't have happened otherwise. If I had the advantage of giving my younger self advice, I think it would be on this point about breadth and to expose yourself to as much as you can across the organisation. Thinking back, there were lots of touch points that as a junior lawyer I had across the organisation. I was advising the marketing team on campaigns. I was advising the commercial team on contracting. I was advising the people team on HR issues. And every one of those moments actually built my experience in the company. At the time, I thought the important part of what I was doing was the provision of legal advice. But in hindsight, what was really important was the exposure it gave me and the experience across the business of the company. And being able to really capture and build on that experience turned into something that was really important. Having the curiosity to ask more questions about those things, even if they weren't sort of core to my role, also was a useful muscle to sort of develop, because that curiosity about what makes a business tick, what makes it succeed, what the different teams do is all really useful building blocks for becoming CEO.